Hi there, and welcome to this session on the four-layer canvas. We will start this session by answering two key questions. What is the four-layer canvas, and why should we use it? Once we understand the four-layer canvas better, we will examine how it relates to OutSystems components in the enterprise. We'll also look at an example of a services architecture to help relate the recommended services approach to the four-layer canvas. So let's get started. The four-layer canvas, or 4LC, is a framework to support architecture design. The four-layer canvas makes it easier to design service-oriented architectures and promote the correct abstraction of reusable services, as well as the isolation of distinct functional modules. One benefit of this approach is that the modules can have more independent life cycles, which reduces the number of unmanageable dependencies and minimizes the impact that changes would have across modules. This helps create an architecture that's easier to maintain and evolve. Each layer of the architecture describes the type of functionality that we would expect to find in modules contained in that layer. As you might expect, the four-layer canvas has 4 layers, but that doesn't mean our architecture is limited to 4 layers. Each layer of the canvas could contain one or more sublayers of modules, and we'll see this in examples in later sessions. In the bottom 2 layers, the modules should contain reusable services. The library modules will contain services that allow us to connect to external systems or to extend our framework. Services in these modules could implement reusable UI patterns, like accordions or carousels. They could implement non-functional requirements, like auditing, or even integrate with external code from an extension module. We also have the core business module layer, which would contain services that are focused around business concepts. These could include business entities, business rules, or even widgets that are supporting specific business concepts. Now, on top of these 2 layers, we will have modules that implement features that will be exposed to end users. These modules in the top 2 layers help users interact with our applications, but they should not provide any services. First, we'll have the end user modules, which are the implementation of the user stories and the user interfaces necessary to support the users interacting with any processes. On top of these, we will have orchestration modules, which will primarily contain access portals that support cross-application processes or dashboards that might need to mash up information from multiple applications. So, as an example of these top 2 layers, we might have an intranet application that needs to provide a home page and dashboard about the status of something like orders. The information necessary for the dashboards may come from multiple processes and applications like order processing, order fulfillment, and shipping. We can think of the access portals as an orchestration that bring all of this information together for a specific audience and can guide them to the relevant data and tasks that need to be addressed. These portals can also be the jumping off point that help us navigate to the other applications. So, why should we use the four-layer canvas? Using the four-layer canvas provides a systematic approach to architecture design, which can help us speed up the overall process. It also promotes a common understanding between business users and developers. The canvas provides a visual representation of the components of the architecture, which can help communicate the design and structure of the architecture to anyone that's interested. And then the four-layer canvas can also make the architecture easier to create and validate by providing tooling that supports the design process and the architectural principles that we wish to follow. So, how does OutSystems fit into an enterprise ecosystem? A typical enterprise will have multiple systems of record, which we will refer to as external producers. It will also contain other sources of information, such as corporate databases. There may also be a need to provide information from the enterprise to external consumers, as well as external portals. So first, we need to have a layer of services that integrates with the external producers and corporate databases. These integration services are wrappers that normalize the data structures for internal consumption and abstract the complexities of the integration to these external systems, such as authentication or error handling. These services should not contain any business logic. Now, besides the integration services, we need to implement any non-functional requirements, or NFRs, that are needed by our application. These can include things like auditing or reusable UI components like maps or style guides, which again should not contain any business logic. We have displayed these types of services in green because they are part of the library layer of the architecture. On top of these library services, we will need core services. Core services provide business concepts, such as core entities, business rules, or reusable business widgets. These core services should be system agnostic and not need to understand the details of any of the external systems that may be providing information. It's the job of the library service layer to abstract those details and insulate the core services from having to know about them. Changing or replacing an external producer would require an integration service to be changed. It would reconnect to the new implementation and remap the data, but those changes should be completely transparent to the internal core service, which would still be using the normalized structure. Since we would like to keep core services system agnostic, the core layer can also provide APIs to expose core services to external consumers. This could be done in a number of different ways, including web services or RESTful services. No business logic should be included in the APIs, since they're only a technical wrapper that is exposing the core services to the outside world. This means that APIs are really just providing an agreed upon interface through a particular protocol for these external systems. Now, on top of these two layers of reusable services, we need to be able to compose applications, which would include both end-user modules and orchestration modules. These applications will provide interfaces and functionality to the end users, who should be able to consume the applications through various different channels. We may also want to make small sections of an application available inside of external portals. The sections or sets of screens are sometimes referred to as microsites. And sometimes this is just as simple as a small set of information that might be made available in an iframe. Now, besides all of the architecture for the services that we've talked about so far, we could integrate with the external producers and consumers through an ESB or Enterprise Service Bus. In terms of architecture, nothing really changes other than the fact that we have shifted the focus of communication from specific endpoints to the ESB. This helps insulate our services from changes to those endpoints and could also provide the flexibility for some of those communications to occur following a publish and subscribe pattern. Now, let's take a look at the bottom two layers of the library and core modules that provide these reusable services. This way, we'll be able to understand more about the services architecture. Here, we have an example of a services architecture that provides sales information for a set of products in a catalog. One thing to notice is that we may have a core set of services whose information is being provided by more than one external system. Products, orders, and customers in this scenario are being provided by multiple external systems. Due to the layered structure of the services architecture, the core services don't need to be concerned with any of those details, because the integration service in the library layer is taking care of the mapping from the external system to the normalized internal abstraction. The APIs will expose our core services to the external consumers so that certain information and functionality can be made available. For example, in this case, our product service is being used directly by an OutSystems consumer, and is being used by the Catalog API, which makes certain information available to the external consumer through an agreed-upon interface. The APIs could also include some logic to audit or log the usage of the API by the external consumer. So, to review, we discussed what the four-layer canvas is and why it's helpful to use it. We examined how OutSystems components fit in the enterprise and how they map to the layers of the four-layer canvas. We reviewed an example of the services architecture to better understand how different parts of the core and library layers work together. So that's it for the four-layer canvas. Thanks for listening.